You guys know the story of how Dustin Poirier ended up in the spot to fight Islam. Islam is sitting, and I guess what you would call a number one contender spot, right? I'm a tournament guy, so I look at everything as a bracket. Islam as champion has advanced through the bracket. Now you got the rest of the contenders, and they're trying to get through to him. Islam comes out and makes a statement that he's going to be fighting on June 9th, and that he is going to defend that belt in November. And in November, he was a little more specific to say it was at Madison Square Garden. And Islam also had both of his opponents. The Madison Square Garden was to be Justin Gaethje if Justin won. Now, this is Islam. If you think I'm jumping around or I'm missing a spot, I'm not. This is all through social media that I know is Twitter, that's now officially called X, and this is through Islam, whose native language is not the one that I'm speaking to you in, but this is still the way the story went. And his second opponent would be Justin Gaethje if Justin won. His first opponent was going to be, so the one for June 9th, his first opponent was going to be the winner of Sarkarian and Oliveira. And I remember making a piece for it because I have the UFC schedule, and I'm looking on there and I'm going, we don't have a date on June 9th. I remember that bringing that to everybody's attention. It's like, yeah, we got a date, and Islam is the main event. So if it's not on your calendar, Chael, then they haven't announced it yet, but Islam has. So we should go with Islam. And it's yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's what would have to be happening. If Islam was defending his belt against the winner of Oliveira and Sakarian, and he was doing it on June 9th, then Islam would have information that I don't. That's okay, fair enough. So, okay. Start looking at it. Start looking at the calendar a little bit closer. And Conor McGregor announces that he is going to be on a pay-per-view in that same month of June. And moreover, why is Gaethje, if the winner, the one that's got the bigger focus? I mean, this is Islam himself letting us know. Islam himself is letting us know my first defense is going to be thrown together. My second one, that one's going to be for keeps. And it just didn't feel that way to me. It very much didn't feel that way. Like, I'm looking at the board and saying, hey, man, the winner of Sakarian and Oliveira, that's a tough night out. That's a very, very tough night out. And every upset that you've ever seen, any upset that you've ever seen, if you put them all together and you start to find the commonalities, there's not many. Right? If there's a lot of commonalities, it becomes more obvious. And if it's more obvious, then it does not qualify as an upset. But with that said, every upset, not just in combat sport, every upset does have a few things in common. And one of those ingredients is when the champion does not realize what a hard task he has in front of him. When the champion isn't as prepared as his opponent, or believes that his opponent is not as prepared as he actually is. Now, you guys follow WWE. One thing during the McMahon era, one thing that Vince would always do is he would take things in real life and then he would portray them on screen. For example, he wanted to have a bad guy character. So he created a guy named Irvin R. Shyster, but he wrestled him under the initials IRS. Everybody hates the IRS, or at least this is the theory, right? So we're going to create a guy and we're going to bring him out and we're going to make him the heel character and people will be able to relate to that. I offer you that one example to share with you. The Vince will often take something that's a reality and he'll put it on screen in a different ways to tell a story. There was a time the Ultimate Warrior was red hot. Ultimate Warrior had never been beaten, but he'd also never been pinned clean, not on television. So he's running through the ranks, he's getting through everything, his head's getting too big for his britches. I mean, all of these things are happening at the same time. And they're happening at the same time as the Honky Tonk Man became the most successful intercontinental champion of all time. And we came to that conclusion because he had held the belt longer than anybody else had. So the big pay-per-view is going on. The honky-tonk man out there with Jimmy Hart. He's got the guitar. He's got the whole bit. He takes the microphone because his opponent can't show up. Now, there's no way you can sell tickets because the event's already going. It's live. But the honky-tonk man says, I'm the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. Had this belt longer than anybody. I'll wrestle anyone. You bring me anyone from the back and I'll wrestle him right now. And the whole building sits there silent. What's going to happen? And then the Warriors' music hits. And it was one of the biggest pops in the history of wrestling. I believe for myself as a fan, it was absolute number one. The Warrior hits the ring and he gets rid of Honky Tonk in 29 seconds. Now, if you go to Google that, you're going to find some places that tell you it's 31 seconds. That's greatly debated. The point is, there had never been an Intercontinental Champion that held the belt as many days as Honky Tonk, and there had never been an Intercontinental Champion that was defeated as fast as Warrior beat him. It ruined Honky's career. They never were able to rebuild Honky Tonk. They didn't know how. I could go on a whole diatribe if there was no rebuild. Bring him back on Monday night towards the end of the show and have him go over. It was real simple, but they couldn't do it. And I bring this to you because much like Vince McMahon brought to life the fact that there was an opponent in the back that was harder than the champion thought he would be, that was more prepared than the champion thought he would have time to be. Just like Vince had brought this to real life, the Warrior was not young. He was not a brand new guy. He was a familiar face. He could move a lot of tickets. He'd been in the industry a long time. And I only share with you, Islam laid out his own plan. It doesn't matter if he had the date of June 9th wrong or not. He got my attention. It doesn't matter if Islam gets assigned to a card that is yet to be announced for Madison Square Garden in the month of November or not. It doesn't matter. He got you close enough there and he laid out who his opponents were going to be. And you might believe that Oliveira is a harder fight than Dustin. You might believe the Sarkarian is a harder fight than Dustin. But generally when you start breaking down who's a harder fight and why, it's because there's a gap within experience, or there's a gap within age, or there's a gap within preparation. And Poirier doesn't represent any of those things. Poirier doesn't even come close to representing any of those things. I don't have any resentments in the sport except one. My time in the sport, I resented it, and my time now, I resent it. I don't like that we only get to do it 3 times a year. Like, that is just enough time for a man with average discipline to get out of shape. Right? Like, that's just enough time. And this is for the average discipline man, just a regular guy. You want to take your superhero, the guy on the poster that's fighting towards the end of the night? When you can do him quickly, it really surprised me about Sarkarian. By the way, only because I knew how ready he was. I knew how ready he was because I had just watched him fight Oliveira. He looked awesome. Whether one judge thought he gave a round away or not, he looked awesome. Fought in every single position. I thought, well, who's going to want to waste that? The weigh-in that was the day before, who's going to want to have to rebeat that scale when everything's already on track? Now, these are different strokes for different folks and different opinions. I'll just share for you that anything you could possibly have to say about a challenger that was brought in and things were a little bit out of order, the benefits that you would have, right? I was never one of those guys in MMA, and I is the smartest guy that's ever done MMA, without a close second. I would hear people say, I want him ready. I want him at his best. And then there'd always be a follow-up question of, why do you want him at his best, you stupid son of a bitch? Because I want to be able to say I beat the best version of him. I couldn't possibly care. I couldn't possibly care what was ever said. I just want to win this one and get to the next one. It was the same thing every night. I want to look good and I want to be excited. I just want to win. I want to do all those other things you mentioned, the next one. And it was the same thing every single time. And I only bring it to your attention as we don't have to wonder where Dustin's at. We know exactly where he's at. We just saw him fight. We don't have to wonder if he can go 5 rounds. We don't have to worry if he's in shape. We don't have to wonder if he can make weight. All of these things just happened. They just happened. And there's no reason to believe that enough time has gone by to cause a deficit. It's a simple observation. But when Islam Makhachev laid out his schedule, and he did make it very clear on Twitter, at least to his own opinion, I'm going to speak to Islam tomorrow. I'm going to speak to him tomorrow. I'm going to do that on Good Guy, Bad Guy over at ESPN. I feel like they should call it Bad Guy and the Other Guy, but anyway, I'm going to do that tomorrow. So I might have a little bit more insight for you, but I do know when he laid out his schedule, at least prior to finding out he was taking on Dustin, he laid his second opponent with a lot more respect and a lot more weight. And just imagine that. You'd have to give more weight and more respect to your second opponent. If you respected and gave weight to your first opponent, you wouldn't be positive you were going to make it to your second opponent. But Islam is. And to overlook and take your eye off a guy like Poirier, to me, feels a lot like the night the honky-tonk man said, "Bring me anybody."